Ernie Humphrey, Educational Programs Leader for Performative, the largest online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Is a Recurring Revenue Model Right for Your Business? As businesses seek predictable and sustainable ways to generate revenue, more companies are moving to a recurring revenue model. A recurring revenue model can fuel the acquisition of new customers and cultivate loyalty in existing customers. Today, our speakers will share with us what it takes to build a recurring revenue business. You will discover how to assess how well suited your current offerings are for a recurring revenue model and how to identify and optimize recurring revenue opportunities to generate a successful model. I would like to thank ARIA Systems, whose commitment to thought leadership helps us make this webinar possible and delivered at no cost. A quick note on today's agenda: first, we'll experience a joint presentation from our featured speakers. Then we'll move to the interactive Q&A session, where we will spend the remainder of our hour. We would like this to be an interactive experience for you. If you have any questions at any time, please go to the questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel and send us your questions. We can't promise to get all of them in, but we will do our best, and we'll certainly follow up afterwards on any questions we did not get to today. A few quick logistical notes. Links to today's presentation and video recording will be sent out to all attendees within 24 to 48 hours of the event. Those attendees who would like CPE credit should have pre-registered for CPE credit and will need to answer all polling questions during the webinar. Finally, you'll be asked to take a short survey today regarding the webinar. We greatly appreciate your feedback, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. A quick word about Performative before we get started. Performative is the largest online community and resource for senior-level corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related leaders. Performative connects corporate finance leaders to provide instant advice and insights on the tough financial and strategic challenges they face every day. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's featured speakers. Jim Geisman is founder and principal of Software Pricing Partners, focusing on revenue issues related to the pricing of software-based offerings. The firm works with companies to accelerate revenue, assess and improve their pricing models, as well as transition to a recurring revenue model. They have also helped clients price, structure, and negotiate large transactions. Jim has been a co-founder, director, advisor, or mentor to early-stage companies and has helped raise more than $25 million for various ventures. He served on the executive committee of the MIT Enterprise Forum and on the board of the Harvard Business School Association of Boston. Currently, he sits on the board of Professional Pricing Society, and he's a certified pricing professional. He holds an electrical engineering degree and business degrees from Tufts University and Harvard, respectively. Our next featured speaker is John Gittinger. John is Senior Vice President of Marketing, ARIA System. As Senior Vice President of Marketing, John is responsible for ARIA System's global marketing strategy, including product marketing, channel marketing, demand generation, and corporate communications. He has more than 20 years of experience delivering business software applications to multi-billion-dollar enterprises, including his most recent role as head of marketing for Accept Software. Prior to this, he led marketing for Fortify Software, where he grew the enterprise customer base from 200 to more than 1,000 and launched Fortify On Demand, the company's first SaaS offering. John studied computer engineering at Case Western University. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to hand the floor over to John. John, the floor is yours. Please take it away. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey, so we have a great presentation today. I'm really excited to have Jim Geisman with us. As we introduced him, he's a pricing specialist, and I think one of the things that we in our line of work, where we're talking to so many enterprises around this transition, this transformation to recurring revenue, one of the big questions that comes up in the course of us doing business is, we get a lot of questions about pricing models and pricing strategies and how to approach this. For many companies, moving into recurring revenue, subscription-based billing, usage-based, those types of business models is a new transition, and so there's a lot of questions about how to move forward with pricing and packaging. So, reached out to Jim today to as an expert in this subject, and he's helped companies, licensed software businesses move to SaaS businesses, etc. I asked if he could join us and give us some of his thoughts on how recurring revenue is some pricing strategies for companies that are just getting into this, as well as bigger companies that may be looking to tune up their situation. So before we get started, Just a little bit of a quick advertisement on ARIA. ARIA Systems is a cloud-based solution for recurring revenue management. We impact billing and monetization. We allow you to bill in virtually any type of recurring revenue model you can come up with. It's not just subscriptions. We also do usage-based business models. We support prepaid, things like app stores, like what Apple does, where you have irregular purchases. All those are different types of recurring revenue models. We support all of them. We also impact the customer experience portion. We help you sell more through an innovative technology that allows you to set thresholds and monitor customer activity for possible opportunities to upsell or cross-sell. And we connect your front end of your business, your billing system, to the service enablement part of the business. So got a lot of great customers. We tend to focus on larger businesses with more complex recurring revenue needs. And before we get started, I always like to throw this slide out there just to make sure we're on the same page, because recurring revenue is it's an idea that's been around for a long time. And if you go to Wikipedia and ask look up what recurring revenue means, it gives a very simple description. It's predictable revenue, and that's predictable. To enhance that, I look at it as predictable on the basis of either contractual terms, historical precedent, something that is going on in the business that makes that revenue predictable. So the way I look at it, I always try to make 3 points about recurring revenue. First of all, as I said earlier, it's a portfolio of business strategies. It's not just about a subscription business model. It's about a variety of different ways of doing business, all which have the subtext of being a predictable revenue stream. And because of that, it's an inherently relationship-centric approach to doing business. If you think about, dial back the time machine, 20 years ago, we lived in a world of very transactionally oriented business where, if you're a customer of Levi's and you go into the Gap to buy pants, you're a customer as long as the transaction's going on. Once that transaction's completed, you're no longer a customer, and that's how business was run for forever. And in recurring revenue business models, the relationship is always present. It's a feature of the business relationship with the customer. And if you look at something like a subscription, of course, simply the relationship is always present, and then there's a bunch of transactions that are happening every month or every year. In usage-based billing, the relationship is there, but you're billing on how much the customer is using of your service, etc. So there's always it's a relationship-centric approach to doing business. As we'll see later on, that has a lot of implications for how you do business. And then finally, it really impacts the entire business. It's not just about, I know we have a lot of finance professionals on here, and you're often the group that bears the brunt of recurring revenue business models, because you've got to invoice, you've got to bill, you've got to do payments and rev rec, things like that. But at the same time, to do recurring revenue well, you've got to have all of the aspects of the business working together to service the customer because of this relationship that's now a feature of your business. So it's about bringing sales and customer service and service delivery and finance. All these pieces have to work together to have a successful recurring revenue business. And so without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jim. Jim and I have known each other for, probably over a decade at this point. And, both as a vendor in businesses I've worked with, Jim's helped us a few times work out our pricing strategies. He's phenomenal. And I definitely recommend him if you've got, questions. And he's going to share a bit more about his thoughts on how to approach the pricing discussion, and hopefully give all of you as finance professionals some insights into some of the different aspects of pricing. So without further ado, I'll give it to you, Jim.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. And thank you for your time, all of those that are attending. First, I thought it would be useful to talk about where recurring revenue fits. I mean, everybody has a business model which by and large is driven by revenue, and a revenue model in turn is driven by a pricing model. But we're really going to focus on the revenue model today. First, it's useful to take a look at recurring revenue across a number of dimensions, and that's what I'd like to do here. We'll talk about the dimensions of recurring revenue. We'll identify where there are opportunities, and then talk about how you can monetize them and then how you move forward. So here are just a handful of recurring revenue businesses. You can see they run the gamut, you know, B2B, B2C, a little of both. You can see the different businesses, and you can see the different financial arrangements. Well, if you back up and squint a bit, you can identify a number of recurring revenue characteristics, and these are the ones that sort of make sense to us. You know, there's the commitment. You know, is it an annual subscription? Is it a per transaction? You know, the variety of products that are included. Is it a pretty constant, or does it change? The line items, you know, the deliverables, are they single line items, or are they multiple ones? The invoicing may be event-driven, periodic, and the payments, you know, may be fixed, like Netflix, monthly, or like Expedia, and the payments are variable according to what you're trying to do. So if we map those companies against the dimensions, what do we see? Well, it's a mess. I mean, what it really tells you is recurring revenue businesses can be anything. You know, as John said, the revenue is predictable. It applies to any type of product. It's a continuous stream of payments or transactions. You don't need to lock people in, but you have to deliver value continuously. And that last point is really the heart of the issue. And in order to do that, you've got to be aware, both financially aware of what's going on and aware of what your customers are doing so that you can respond appropriately. So let's turn now to the opportunities. Where are they? Well, there are three components to virtually any opportunity. There are the products and services that deliver value to the customer, for which the customer pays and generates revenue. As we saw before, products and services can be, you know, anything. It can be digital, it can be physical. The product can be based on timing. You know, for example, you know, the shipping options for Amazon, or the immediacy of Expedia. In terms of customer value, it can be based on a number of factors, usage or consumption. It can make the purchasing process easier, for example, Amazon's recommendation engines, or it can facilitate decision-making, such as Expedia, where it's tough to make a choice of what flights you want, but Expedia, among other travel sites, help you in that regard. And then when we turn to revenue source, we take a look at the transaction with the customers. Well, you know, any customer transaction can have volume. In other words, you can have a number of transactions from a single customer, or conversely, you can have volume across all of your customers. The duration refers to how long you're engaged with your customer. The frequency, obviously, how often do they order. And aggregation is something that I think may be a little new to some of you, and as I got to thinking about it, it was a little surprising to me. Aggregation, where you've got so many customers, you can play the law of large numbers and predict your revenue stream. For example, in Amazon Prime, or in the case of Air Products that both rent cylinders and sell gas, they have so many customers that at any given time they know what percentage of customers are going to do what sort of thing. And all of this is well and good, but you're missing one critical set of skills, and that has to do with the logistics and the financial aspects of these elements. In terms of logistics, it doesn't do you any good if you can't fulfill the orders, deliver the orders, manage channels if you have them, and work with international distributors if that's an issue. On the financial side, I think we all like to get paid. So you have to do invoicing, you've got to manage the terms, you've got to keep track of promotions, and then finally you've got to do payment processing, since a lot of business is done via credit cards. These are non-trivial issues, and that's basically what ARIA does. But I think it's really important to note this. If you look at promotions, one critical aspect there, and I think a lot of people overlook it, is this is an ability to test prices, to test different terms. And if you can't keep track of all of your promotions, you're dead in the water. You have limited your opportunities for growth, revenue, potential revenue sources, and so forth. So if we take a look at these elements against the companies, we can see that it kind of fits. The revenue sources, Netflix has a lot of volume for entertainment. The customers value availability, especially the streaming product. And what's a critical skill? Well, it doesn't matter whether you're getting CDs delivered to your home or you're streaming. You got to fulfill it. At the other end of the line, if you look at Air Products, who rent cylinders and sell gas, it's the frequency that does it. The products are gas, and what's the customer value? Well, Air Products basically provides peace of mind because they monitor usage, and they make sure that what you need is what you get. And obviously delivery and fulfillment is a critical skill. But you can see that along all of these very different businesses, these four elements have to be in play, otherwise you're dead in the water. And I think the message here is opportunities are everywhere. It's like motorcycles are everywhere, but opportunities are everywhere. And I think it's up to you to try to encourage other members of your team to find them. And if you're looking for new opportunities, often that will take you off your normal beaten path, and you really need a framework to develop these new opportunities. And the business model canvas is one of the better frameworks that I've seen, and I just call it to your attention. It's an orderly way of looking at your business or a new opportunity and understanding what you have to do in order to succeed. Okay. So for those of you that have a recurring revenue stream, perhaps this will be old hat to you. I hope not. And for the others, I hope it will make the challenge of monetizing a recurring revenue stream less formidable. So how do you monetize? First of all, as you know, nobody's going to pay if they get nothing in return. So customers will pay for value. And I think what you need to do is you need to take a look at the core of what your offering is and how it's structured, and determine what the hard dollar or the emotional impact of better, faster, cheaper is. Better, faster, cheaper is really just shorthand for the advantages you have over current solutions. And this works particularly well in a B2B environment. It also, relative to emotional impact, even though you may not be able to quantify it, I think what you can do is you can judge the intensity of that emotional impact, and the more intense the emotional impact is, probably the higher value. Well, as you probably know, pricing is a mess. It's very difficult to do pricing. Either you have a high volume of SKUs to do pricing on, and you need some system for doing that, or you're pricing some basic products that may drive your volume, and people tend to go around and around on pricing, and I think there's more heat than there is light. And what we've done over the years is develop a pricing model that parses what's a complex problem into some pieces, and then once you've once you have addressed each of the pieces, then you can put them back together and make sure that they work. At the heart of any monetization model are the rights models, the metric, what you charge for, and your commercial terms and conditions. And in B2B, it's very important that your metric, what you charge for, lines up with the way your customers get value in their business. In B2C, clearly what you're charging for ought to scale according to how the customers experience your product. After you're done dealing with the rights model, and by the way, T's and C's also add value. I mean, you're all familiar with companies that have 15-day terms versus 60-day terms. Well, 60-day terms often translates into real value, especially for very large companies. In terms of offering structure, what we're talking about here are the products and services. You can have services surrounding a product. You can have products surrounding services. The point is that these things often reinforce each other. And then finally, once you know what you're going to charge for and what the it is, then you can go about the price setting process of actually setting the list prices and then determining your discounts or other incentives you're going to provide your customers. And if you do this in a systematic way, which is really all I'm advocating here, is it just makes it a lot easier for you to do standard or tailored transactions. And the standard transactions is really like ordering off a multiple choice menu where you choose a couple from the first column and something from the second column. And in effect, what you're doing is customizing a configuration which you then offer as a standard. Or you're customizing a configuration on the fly to meet a specific customer need. And that's a tailored transaction. The hardest thing to deal with in most companies are these custom configured transactions where every transaction is different. So now the question is, okay, I understand that recurring revenue opportunities have a number of dimensions, and there are plenty of opportunities, and if I go about them systematically, I can monetize them. But how do I move forward? Where do I look? Well, first, I think you have to think creatively. Thinking outside the box is something that I think we all do, at least in our sleep, but we need to do it when we're awake. And furthermore, thinking outside of the box is often very risky, and if your organization is risk averse, you want to insulate these out-of-the-box thinkers about new businesses, new business opportunities, or new business models so that they have a chance to succeed. And even if you think outside of the box, you really need to plan carefully. I think many of us are familiar with this puzzle where you try to take these blocks and you move them to another peg. And that can only be done if you do things very systematically. You can't do it haphazardly. But even if you plan carefully, what you really need to do is execute, and you need to execute ruthlessly. And this may mean changing your computer systems or integrating new pieces in. It may change your people processes where you need different skill sets amongst the people. And certainly it will take different business processes as well, and you need to change them. So one of the keys here is really change management.
So, okay, well, great. Hey, great stuff, Jim. Thank you for that as always. It's great to hear your insights and your approach to doing pricing. I think it's there's a lot of science there and a lot of trial and error that you've evolved over the years, and I just always love hearing about it. Every time I hear your presentation, I learn something new. And I like this donut that you had earlier where you have the three dimensions of it. I think that's new. I haven't seen that one before, but that's a great way to look at the problem. Hey, before we jump off here into questions, just want to talk a little bit about the recurring revenue opportunity itself and what's happening across the industry. As a vendor, we interact with many different types of companies, enterprises, as well as emerging leaders, and so we see something that you as an individual person in an individual company might not see, which is this massive trend towards recurring revenue business models. And I think what's driving this at the core of it is two major trends in technology. We're in sort of a perfect storm of trends here that are really transforming the business landscape in a big way, and those two trends are the increase in both the horsepower and the ubiquity of mobile devices. So we've gone from very primitive sort of cell phone devices to now having what's the equivalent of a 1990s IBM PC in your hand, and that's only going to get more powerful. I've been watching this. If you haven't seen this new P-cell technology that's getting some buzz in the press now, where they're talking about increasing the data throughput rates on your mobile device by 1,000 times. They think they can do that in the next couple of years. And the processor power, of course, we know that's getting more powerful in the storage and all that. But what that means is that your handheld device is going to become more and more powerful and more useful. And of course, the cost factor means that countries all over the world, India, China, emerging economies, can all outfit their populations with these devices. So that's a tremendous increase in reach, right? And at the same time, with the cloud technologies and the moving to service models, the cost to do computing and the cost to deliver information is going down quite a bit. And we just talked about that with big data. The things that used to cost you $10 or $20 million investments to make happen, you can now buy as a service, and an outside vendor will make that investment for you, and you can just use it as you need to. And so the cost to process and deliver information is also simultaneously going down. And I think those two trends have created just this enormous opportunity for businesses to rethink how they talk to their customers and how they do business. And that's what's really driving recurring revenue, is the idea that, hey, if we've acquired a relationship and a customer, let's monetize that relationship over time and not just try to get that one transaction out of them. Let's figure out a service or some kind of business model where we can have an ongoing relationship with that customer. We can sell them new things. We can do all sorts of great stuff with it. But at the core of this is this just amazing technology transformation. So what it means for individual businesses is that you'll have customers, you'll be able to reach customers, you'll be able to reach more of them more quickly. The cost to do business with them and the kind of experiences you can deliver are going to go down tremendously. So if you're not thinking about recurring revenue, it's definitely something, of course, we encourage. So I think, though, and some of the reticence in the audience, I think there is definitely some implications, that come with going to a recurring revenue model. First of all, selling is different, and you've got it's not only that how do you acquire the customer, but it's how do you upsell, how do you cross-sell. If you're in a from the finance standpoint, you may be going from a periodic invoice, a sporadic periodic invoice to a continuous invoicing. Every month you're invoicing a customer for something, and you've got to go through that whole cycle of how do you calculate the bill and do the invoice and all that. So selling with the customer is definitely very different, and that has has an impact on the business. Next thing is managing customers is different. As we've talked about, recurring revenue models are inherently relationship oriented, and in the old days where you have the customer, when the customer stops being a customer when they walk out the door in a recurring revenue business, the customer relationship is front and center, and that has a lot of implications for the business. Just like in an individual's personal life, when you have a relationship, there's obligations on both sides. Both parties have obligations to that relationship, and what the business wants is that ability to communicate with the customer, what we call customer intimacy. You want to be able to know that customer, reveal their information to you, and have that ongoing conversation that results in more sales and more, better relationships and more money for the business. At the same time, the customer has expectations on the business. They want to be recognized when they call in. They don't want, they don't want to have the experience of having, the person on the other end not have the right information or not be able to take care of them, whether that's issuing a credit or changing changing an address, or not have those capabilities to do that. And so I think that's a big impact on the business, and many businesses often don't realize how much more their customers are going to expect out of them when they move to a recurring revenue model. The third area, really, of course, and this is definitely front and center for the finance organization, is reporting's different. You've got a whole new set of KPIs to manage. You've got MRR, ARR, CAC, which is customer acquisition cost, which is really kind of the key number in a recurring revenue business, which is how much does it cost me to acquire that customer, so I know how much money I have to make on the back end of the business to pay off that customer acquisition cost. You've got a whole new set of KPIs, and that can be a challenge for the finance organization. Certainly can drive new system acquisitions and new personnel changes to manage that. And then finally, another point we like to make, which can be a pain for the finance team, is that typically these recurring revenue businesses are new business models, emerging businesses, and often you'll see some company try to launch one as a competitive strategy, or to try to expand into a new market that maybe they've been selling to the enterprise, and they decide, hey, we want to go down market, and we're going to use this subscription model to take our services that we've been selling to the enterprise, and we're going to sell it to the new guys down here at this lower end of the market. But what happens on the back end of the business is, because these are new initiatives and new things that are going on, often the business doesn't really know a lot about the market, and so there's this need for agility and innovation around pricing models and packaging models and discounts and coupons, and so you need capabilities in your organization that can move much more quickly. And if you're in an old type business, you may not change your pricing model once a year or once every 2 years. In a recurring revenue business, you may be making frequent, constant adjustments to it, and so that changes also. That also has an impact on what the business needs to go forward. But the great news in all this is that there's a lot of money to be made in this industry. It's a market that's growing at a tremendous rate. Once again, as a vendor, we have a unique perspective because we deal with a huge number of different companies, and some of these models that we're seeing are amazing. Amazing that we've got companies like Philips Medical, which are taking $3 million capital equipment purchases and turning them into recurring revenue models where they put them on site at a hospital and the customer just pays for them as they use them. We've seen tremendous innovation around how to do this.
Okay, great. Next question I'll direct to John. What should companies with subscription commerce models be looking for in a billing platform?
Well, if I haven't been hinting around this enough, let me just come out and say it. I think that the flexibility to change business models is a capability area that buyers often overlook. I mean, obviously there's a business fit issue that you've got to deal with. If you're doing subscriptions, the solution's got to do subscriptions. If you're doing usage-based billing, the solution's got to be able to do that. So there's a whole bunch of business fit stuff which typically gets a lot of attention. I'm not going to go into. So the things that businesses don't look at that I think are really important are, first of all, that agility. What happens when we want to change the price model, or we want to change a packaging model? What does that change cycle look like in this solution? We've gone into accounts where that cycle could be 9 or 12 months, and so how agile is that? So that's certainly one area that's an often overlooked question that buyers should be asking is, okay, show me what the change cycle looks like. How difficult or easy is it going to be for me to change a pricing model, introduce a new product, make a discount claim? All those use cases are ones that, especially from the finance team, they don't think about that a lot, but all that stuff around selling. How do I upsell into technology? How do I cross-sell? What can I trigger? What behaviors can I trigger off of? So if I see something like a customer is downgrading service level, I can hit them back with an offer to upgrade or change services. Those kind of things are often overlooked. Another area that's really worth considering is the whole customer experience. And you know, as we talked about, buyers are looking for, you know, in this relationship model where they now have an account, they're using the service on a regular basis. They expect to be known when they call in. They want people to have the right information. They may want self-service from the website. They may want to download their invoices or, you know, look up information. And you know, how does the solution interact with your customer experience that you want to give your customers, and how are you going to glue those two things together? If a customer wants to change their address, what does that cycle look like? And is that going to be, you know, this big headache, and they're going to get, you know, the guys on the other end, your vendor is going to get it wrong 3 or 4 times, or is it something you just go on the website and change their billing address and it's seamless and it works every time? You know, then the final area that's also really important is it's got 2 parts to it. One is what we call service enablement, which is how does the billing system have to interact with the systems that are actually delivering service to your business, for your customers. So if you're in a business that's like what we call an instant on business, where, you know, as soon as that credit card is taken, the service needs to be on as fast as possible. Like, you know, a good example is, you know, one of our customers is Mozy. If you use the Mozy online backup service or Carbonite or one of these services, and you use these, you know that you swipe your credit card and, you know, basically 3 minutes later you download a widget and you start backing up your system. It starts almost immediately. That's kind of an instant-on experience. If you're in a business that needs to deliver that experience, then the billing system has to be tightly integrated with the service delivery system. And you know, so that's just one example. Another one is if you don't do that well, you get revenue leakage. And we have, you know, we've seen situations where we go in and you know, customers literally bleeding you know, millions in free service because they have no way to connect the billing machinery and the monetization machinery with the service delivery machinery. Or it's being done, you know, it's not no way, but they're being done in very crude ways. Like, you know, someone takes a spreadsheet of, you know, bad boy customers and sends it over to production, and they never get around to it, or they make errors in it, and so, you know, you leak revenue, and that's a serious problem. And that's kind of a smaller example of a bigger issue, which is how does the system have to integrate with the rest of your technology infrastructure? You know, and this is dangerous for the finance team because often they think the finance team goes out and looks at a solution and they say, hey, this is great, we can do invoicing here, it's, you know, we can run bills and look up customer information. They're not thinking about how does that system have to interact with the rest of the organization. And that's where we see the train go off the rails a lot of times, is you try to build that into the rest of the organization and there's not the hooks to do it, not the technology capabilities to make that work as a holistic solution in your business.
Yeah, John, you know, I'd like to add something there.
Sure.
A major part of the customer experience, as I think about it, is now, no waiting. And right. Often I've found a very interesting thing in that there are a lot of click monitoring systems that are put in place by marketing that in fact get in the way of the business that I want to transact.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at the customer experience, it's very important to take a look at that holistically, because yes. You do not want something that goes on in the finance group in terms of booking orders to be interfered with by stuff that's going on elsewhere in the organization. So, you know, you need to be very judicious in your use of other technologies that can interfere with that customer experience.
Yeah, or not even, you know, close those loops of like, okay, finance is booking the order, customer calls in to sales or customer service, that information never got over to those guys, and so they don't know what's going on, or they can't, you know, they can't respond, and sometimes those are business opportunities, you know, and they don't have the information they need. So how do you complete those loops and make sure, like you say, you know, and this is what I think is going to drive the business discussion more and more in our world with these technologies is, you're right, customers are going to expect more and more instant on type experiences or now type of experiences, because that's what they're getting from Netflix, that's what they're getting from Amazon, and et cetera. And so that's going to become the bar that we all have to meet to just even do business. And I don't think a lot of, you know, these solutions, a lot of the billing solutions tend to be very finance ops eccentric, which is important. Obviously, that's the key constituency, but if you don't think about this holistically and these round trips you need to make, that's where we see, you know, follow up when we come into accounts.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. You have time for a few more questions. You've covered this pretty well. I'd just like to make a point on this. Jim, could you share with us what are a few of the biggest hurdles that might make it difficult to shift to a recurring revenue model?
Sorry. Okay. I think the biggest hurdle is really not technical. It's organizational. It takes a certain amount of courage. I think often the hurdles, if you have a direct sales force, can be there, especially in the incentive comp programs. I think the other hurdle is, you're introducing perhaps a foreign body, and people resist change, and I think that's an issue. One of the other things that we've noticed, at least on the software side, is when you're introducing a recurring revenue model, that obviously has something to do with Rev Rec, but more to the point, it really has a lot to do with cash flow. And a lot of people who are addicted to the pay up front model, don't pay continuously, they're scared that their cash flow is going to be adversely affected. And I think the way around that is a gradual rollout, because it really takes time for the recurring revenue model to kick in, because you're basically adding revenue building blocks at a much different pace and at a much different level than you are when you have a big slug of cash coming in the door.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Just to add to that, just kind of just make a little point on what Jim said. That's why, from our perspective, we see a lot of businesses using recurring revenue to expand markets. So, that example I gave earlier of like, hey, we sell, we have a service that we have something we sell to the Fortune 500. Let's use recurring revenue to reformulate that strategy, or what we do there, and see if we can move into, the mid-market, or or a segment of the market. Hey, we sold to this industry. Let's reformulate it to sell to another industry. And I think recurring revenue can be a great way to get started. Is to use it to do a market expansion type model, and that can be, and then that doesn't blow up your existing business and lets you transition out over time. And we had one customer, Experian, do that very well, and they found over time that the customers started to naturally migrate towards recurring revenue, but it gave them time to learn, to let their bigger customers learn about it, and they saw a nice transition happen from that, because they used it initially to expand into a new market. Eventually, it became the way they did business across their major market too. But it happened in a gradual way that was quite manageable.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Maybe one final question for you, John. Is there anything new coming in terms of technology in order to make this shift to recurring revenue models easier for businesses on all fronts?
Well, I think there's a couple, as we've talked about in this today, there's a couple shifts that need to happen for a business. One is, the shift in consciousness, right, and understanding the model and what it can do and what it can't do. The other is sort of, there's always a technology and kind of capability shift that has to happen, which includes technology, your people, technology, all that, your capabilities in this area. You may need to think about business impact and some of those things. So, and certainly as a vendor, we're always thinking about this for our customers, and we've got lots of innovation we're doing in this area, especially in the area of reporting and really how do I monetize, how do I make more money out of my recurring revenue business? Because I think that's always the way out, is that you've got this relationship now. How do I make more money from it? And whether that's introducing new services, is it upselling, all those things that we talk about. What are the analytics and the automation that needs to happen to make that really fast and efficient, so any business can get into the game? But beyond that, and I think the good news is, there's guys like Jim out there now, and and other vendors, even big SIs now, are starting to build up strong practices in this area to help businesses make this transition. And Jim's is a good example of that. And one of the reasons I like to have him talk to you guys is because he's got a lot of experience in helping businesses make this transition. Pricing is one of the big areas, especially, in my industry, the licensed software industry that I came from, there's a huge shift going on. We saw with Adobe this year, was I think the biggest, one of the biggest news items of the year is Adobe moving their entire, $4 billion business to subscriptions and recurring revenue business model. And that's not the only one. I mean, we're talking to lots of big software companies that are making this move. So how do you do that? And what's the thinking and the model to do that right? And so there's a lot of great stuff out there. And I, certainly if people want to, reach out to me or Jim, Performative's got our information and happy to, coach, and give you any guidance that we can.
Yeah, I think there are two other technology trends, both mobility and security. And mobility, you're seeing people being able to use their smartphones as point-of-sales terminals, which increase the reach of a company. And security, as you know, has always been a big deal. And you really ought to leave that to specialists, or it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And thanks a lot for that, for letting me make that comment.
Oh, thank you very much. With that, we'll conclude the Q&A session. Any questions you do not get answered, we'll coordinate with our speakers. A big thank you to John and Jim for their time and insights. They're clearly thought leaders in their field, an excellent source of information on today's topic. Note that in the post-webinar survey, you'll be asked to take right after we close the webinar. You'll have the opportunity to express your interest in being connected with either of them with just a few mouse clicks. A big thanks again to our sponsor, ARIA Systems, whose commitment to thought leadership helps us make this event possible. And finally, a big thank you to the audience for your valuable time. Make the rest of your day great, everyone. Thank you very much.